Greetings, sirs and madams. I'm Seraphic Zero, and today we're bringing you a movie review and discussion of Gundam Narrative. Now, I normally don't do movie reviews on this channel, but the premiere of Gundam Narrative to US theaters was a pretty momentous occasion, so I figured I'll go ahead and give you my thoughts on it. Now, I am going to spoil the ever-loving crap out of this movie, so if you want to avoid spoilers, I recommend you maybe come back after you've seen it yourself. So, Gundam Narrative is a direct sequel to Gundam Unicorn, and Gundam Unicorn is basically the culmination of the new type phenomenon and the psychoframe technology in Universal Century. Gundam Narrative is basically a story that kind of discusses the fallout of the events in Gundam Unicorn, so you definitely can't really watch Gundam Narrative on its own. You definitely need to see Unicorn first. When it comes to fans of Universal Century, there are essentially two camps. One camp is they just love everything about Universal Century, and they just love all the new type stuff and the crazy magic that they can do. And then there's the other camp where they kind of like the technology of Universal Century and the consistent development timeline and the technology and all that type of stuff. And I'm actually firmly in this second camp. I actually, as a concept, new types aren't terrible, but I generally find that the execution of it is not to my liking. And it's fine to have differences of opinion in this manner, but we don't all have to like the same thing. But yeah, if I could summarize Gundam Narrative in one word, it would be this: ugh. And that is because it kind of takes the whole new type stuff and it just kicks it to 11, and it's sort of just it kind of pushes the new type stuff to a point where the whole technology and the story stuff and the characters they don't even really matter, and it just kind of fell short for me in a lot of ways. So the basic story in Gundam Narrative is that there's a pilot named Jonah who really has no business being in a mobile suit, but he is being bossed around by some lady named Michelle, and they are out to capture the Gundam Phoenix. Now, the Phoenix is the third of the Unicorn Gundams. Basically, there are 3 units, and all 3 of them have full-body psychoframe. Basically, it's technology that enhances the abilities of new types, and it enhances it to the point where the new types can start breaking the laws of physics in very, very powerful ways. Kind of at the end of Gundam Unicorn, there were some people who fired this super weapon. I think it was the colony laser, and this is a insanely massive and powerful weapon. And just with two of these Unicorn Gundams, they completely stopped the beam. And this is sort of if me as an individual were to kind of backhand an explosion from an atom bomb and then nobody was hurt. That's essentially what they did. So you can see how this psychoframe technology can be just wildly out of control and dangerous, and people would be after it for various reasons. Yeah, Jonah and Michelle are after the Gundam Phoenix, and the Phoenix is just kind of running loose by itself, and nobody can catch it. And I guess so Gundam Narrative is basically about chasing down the Gundam Phoenix, and then I suppose the relationship between Jonah, Michelle, and then the Gundam Phoenix's quote-unquote pilot is revealed through flashbacks throughout the movie. The way it's revealed is that as children, Jonah, Michelle, and then Rita are friends, and Rita is a new type. So Rita actually has a vision of the colony drop in Australia, and by having contact with Jonah and Michelle, like they also have visions of the same thing, and they're kind of like Jonah and Michelle, they're just regular people, but by having contact with Rita, they have basically pseudo new type powers. And so I suppose what happens is they get taken in by, I think, the Flanagan Institute, and they're this horrible organization who basically experiments on new type children to try to, extract their powers and make them into weapons and that type of crap. I guess the Flanagan Institute is trying to figure out, like, they know that between these three, not all of them are actually new types, but they can't tell who's the real one. So what happens is Michelle claims that she's actually the true new type, even though she isn't. And so she gets adopted by some powerful, rich family with political influence and all that type of crap. And so she goes off and has a fine life. And then from there, the Flanagan Institute actually takes Rita, and I suppose they kill her and start experimenting on her brain. And they somehow stick her into the Gundam Phoenix, which actually is a little unclear, like, how they do that, especially given the timeline, because I think at the time where they cut out Rita's brain, like, I don't think the Unicorn Gundams have even been built by that point, because, that happens when she's quite young. But anyway, yeah, she ends up in the Gundam Phoenix somehow, and Jonah, I suppose, it's really unclear what happens to Jonah. I guess he just gets slapped around by a bunch of people, and he joins the military for reasons that aren't very clearly explained. And yeah, so he eventually ends up in the Gundam narrative, and yeah, Michelle wants Jonah to capture the Gundam Phoenix so they can basically use psychoframe technology. Now, what Michelle claims psychoframe can do is that, like, she claims that it can reverse time and also make people immortal. And there's two pieces of evidence she has for this, I suppose. So, towards the end of Gundam Unicorn, there were some mobile suits that were chasing the Unicorn, and the pilot Banniger did some new type bullshit where it disabled those mobile suits. And so, in Gundam Narrative, it's revealed that, like, inspecting those mobile suits later, they were disabled because their reactors were dismantled. And Michelle claims that they were dismantled because their time was reversed. Now, personally, I don't find that this is very strong evidence for control over time. Like, how do you know it's not just telekinesis that didn't just physically take them apart instead of reversing time? But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there was a kind of a lost in translation thing right there going on. Okay, and then also Michelle claims that, like, new type phenomenon, and especially phenomenon revolving around psychoframe, can make people immortal. And this is kind of supported by a lot of evidence from earlier, like, Universal Century stories, like the Zeta Gundam being able to, like, call back the spirits of people who have passed, and, like, using, like, their emotions as, like, power and that type of stuff. And I guess there's all kinds of crazy new type hijinks in Gundam Unicorn where Marita, like, horrible spoilers. Yeah, Marita basically became Space Jesus after she died because she was a new type, and all that type of stuff. So Michelle is claiming that, like, if we can use that technology to essentially make humanity immortal, like, humanity won't need to suffer the way it does now. Like, there won't be, like, any, like, lack or starvation, and people don't need to do horrible things to get ahead and that type of stuff. And I kind of get that motivation, but the way it's kind of handled, it's kind of very clumsy. And it's just sort of explained to, like, the rest of the cast, and I don't know if they're really into it like, or not. It's just kind of there. Anyway, so the rest of the movie is basically about how Jonah and Michelle are chasing down the Gundam Phoenix, and the sleeves get involved in chasing the Phoenix for some reason, and there's some dick named Zoltan, and he's piloting a Shinanju Stein and a Neo Zeong. And if you've seen Gundam Unicorn, the Neo Zeong is this absolutely gigantic mobile armor type thing, and it also has I don't know if it's cycle frame exactly, but it has very, very powerful new type technology in it. And so Zoltan, for almost no reason, kind of goes on a murderous rampage, and using the Neo Zeong, I'm not really sure what he's trying to do. Like, I think he's trying to lure in the Gundam Phoenix, but it's not really clear why he would want to, because he really has no relation to the Phoenix or Rita. I guess he also tries to destroy everything. I guess because he's just sort of a lonely psychopathic reject. Yeah, anyway, I guess it's sort of revealed that Michelle's motivations aren't really what she claimed to the other characters. So she was claiming that she was chasing the Gundam Phoenix because she was after its technology, but what she really wanted to do was to talk to Rita again, because Rita's soul was put into the Gundam Phoenix, and Michelle wanted to apologize to Rita and Jonah because, Michelle had lied about being the actual new type and went off to have this nice life, while her other two friends, they basically, one of them got their brain scrambled, and I guess Jonah was just a loser and had a horrible life. So, so I guess Michelle wanted to make that up to them. Yeah, so the movie just comes to this conclusion, they fight Zoltan because he's an asshole, and Jonah and Michelle get reunited with Rita, and some crazy new type stuff happens, and I guess that's it. Yeah, and then the Phoenix flies off, and that's the end of the movie. So okay, there we go. All right, so as you can see, I'm a little displeased with the way the characters and the story was handled, especially because a lot of the story was told through multiple flashbacks. So the flashbacks were very disjointed, and then a lot of the flashbacks were just repeating the same thing and not really adding anything new. And so that was sort of bizarre. To me, it felt like the story was too thin to really fill up the amount of time that the movie had. So they were just repeating the same thing with the exact same lines and thought. They were trying to drive in the emotional impact that all this was having on Jonah, but it didn't really work. It just sort of got really boring and frustrating because nothing new was being developed. Yeah, I think all the new type hijinks just really got out of hand. But yeah, if you love new type magic and shit like that, this is gonna be your jam. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the characters a little bit. So one weird thing you'll notice about the animation is that it's noticeably less good compared to Gundam Unicorn. And a bizarre thing you'll see about the characters is that everybody has very weird hair. And also everyone's hair is unusually non-detailed. It's kind of like just a shape and like no strands of hair or no texture or gravity or anything like that going on. It just looks strange. So I wish I didn't have to bring that up, but it is oddly distracting during the movie. So there's that. And about the actual characters, so Universal Century tends to have this problem with its characters where they usually have some blend of these three character traits, and those traits are incompetence, B, being unlikable, or C, being a selfish asshole. And so Gundam Narrative's cast is no exception. Like, usually some character is at least one of these things, or a blend of all of them. Okay, so let's talk about the actual, like, individual characters here. Jonah is a weird phenomenon. So here's the main problem with Jonah. He technically doesn't even need to be in the movie. So while he is the main character, like, he's barely on screen, he barely speaks, and he technically doesn't have any motivation in the movie at all. I suppose he's trying to chase Rita and reunite with her and all that type of stuff. But we really don't know anything about any of the characters. We don't know anything about Jonah or Rita. And yeah, we get that, you know, like, he was forcibly separated from Rita, but why does he want so badly to reunite with her? And why does he even care about her so much? That's not explained, like, at all. Main characters in Gundam, they're usually Gundam pilots, you know? And so Jonah pilots the Gundam Narrative, but he's kind of a mediocre pilot. During the course of the movie, he never does anything cool, ever. He doesn't even say anything cool. He's just sort of there, and not a very good use of screen time. So we'll talk more about Jonah later. But yeah, that's kind of Jonah in a nutshell. Useless and pointless. So the character I would say who has the most screen time and sort of the most motivation and narrative, like, to her is Michelle. So Michelle kind of did this thing where she betrayed her friends, and she's the person, like, motivating the project to capture the Gundam Phoenix. She says she's trying to capture it for the technology to make up for her past mistakes, and then also she wants to reunite with Rita to apologize to her and make things up to Jonah, because I guess Jonah's just kind of useless on his own, or something like that. So Michelle was, I don't know, like, Michelle is also unlikable. Like, she's kind of a horrible person, and she does a lot of bad things, like, to people. And there's not really much about her to like. Like, I understand her character motivations. It's just that the way her story was executed could have been a lot better. But yeah, she's essentially the central pillar of the movie. Yeah, not a lot of substance to her either. Okay, so Rita is bizarre to explain. So Rita is essentially a character trope. Like, she's that nice and pure person who basically has been separated from you or has died, and you're constantly chasing her because, well, she got away from you. Like I said before, Rita is that new type that gave who loaned her powers over to Jonah and Michelle. And she's apparently, in the flashbacks, she's a very nice, very kind and spiritual person. But we don't know anything about her character or her past or anything like that. So we don't really know, like, what makes her a good person. Like, why do Jonah and Michelle like her so much? And my problem with Rita is her character, like, kind of has a lot of screen time and also doesn't, because all the screen time she has is in flashbacks of Jonah trying to get to her or chase her or find her or things like that. But Rita only has like 3 lines throughout the movie, and it's just those 3 lines repeated over and over in Jonah's flashbacks. So there's no substance there. She's basically just the character trope and has no development or anything like that. But supposedly she's a very nice person, and her soul is stuck in the Phoenix, and we have to capture the Phoenix. That's kind of all we got, like, with her. But yeah, she seems like a nice person. Okay, here's a big problem. Here's this guy named Zoltan. He's the bad guy, and essentially everything about this character is awful. He's not enjoyable and is not interesting or engaging in any way at all. So first of all, this is just my personal opinion, you know, everyone has different tastes, but he is a very not nice looking like character. He's got that gross like haircut where you have the side of your hair shaved, and he's got the face tattoos, and he just looks crazy and mean. And essentially, he's just the murderous psychopath character trope that you see a lot in Gundam and in a lot of bad stories. And additionally, he's also the murderous psychopath with an extremely powerful mobile armor. So that just doesn't make sense, you know? Like, if you have somebody that murderous and ready to betray you and ready to kill, like, just anybody for no reason, like, if I was in his chain of command, I would have put a bullet, like, in this guy's head, like, in an instant. You were too much of a risk, you know? And what kind of idiot would stick this guy in one of the most powerful mobile weapons in existence? Like I understand, like, he's like a cyber new type or something, and reasonably he would be one of the few people who can control the Neo Zeong, but he's too dangerous and unstable. So this is just like one of the worst character tropes ever. It's very boring and unengaging, and it barely makes any sense, and it's just not worth anyone's time. They really need to not do this type of character ever again. It's just not good. But yeah, unfortunately, he does pilot the Shinanju Stein, and like, he barely uses the Stein, and it's really hard to place why he's in the movie, because outside of just being a new type, he's not very related to the other three characters, you know? He's just basically there to be a physical opponent for the battle at the end. And even then, he doesn't make for a very strong opponent either, because he's not a terribly good pilot. And his motivations just aren't very clear. I guess he's a murderous psychopath because he has a cyber new type. They were attempting to recreate Char in some sort of, I don't know, they just mentioned it in passing. They don't go into any detail. But yeah, apparently Zoltan was created like out of that project. And he's a murderous psychopath because he's a cyber new type who's very mentally unstable. I guess he's very disillusioned with the world because he's kind of rejected by society. But I suppose that happened because he never tried. He never tried to not be a murderous psychopath. I think that would have worked well for him if he tried it. But yeah, I guess he ends up getting betrayed by his own team, and he kills them. And then he goes off to try to destroy the world or something. Or maybe he tries to learn the Phoenix. It's not terribly clear why. Yeah, they never explained, like, what his relationship was with the Phoenix. Like, was he really trying to lure it in? Or did he just go to the Helium-3 site to try to, you know, blow it up and use it to destroy the world or something? I don't know. Anyway, that's what he does. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the mobile suits. And, you know, like, a lot of reviews, they're not even going to talk about this, but, you know, I quite like mobile suits and mechanical design and stuff, so let's talk about that a little bit. So, the Gundam narrative is a little weird. I kind of half like it and half don't. It was essentially built to chase down the Phoenix and capture it. And it has two different loadouts. It has this Type A loadout where it's essentially a mobile armor with like very powerful weapons and like some claw arms to try to catch the Phoenix. And it has a Type B thing where, yeah, so it has some capture calls that are basically wired in comms and stuff like that. In addition, the Gundam narrative also has full body cycle frame like the Phoenix. It essentially needs it in order to like just keep up with the Phoenix in terms of performance. But unfortunately, Jonah just isn't a very good pilot. And weirdly enough, just in terms of story and choreography, the narrative doesn't do anything. Like it really doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't really have any successful battles with anything. And it just kind of gets tossed aside and nothing matters. So there you go, Gundam narrative. Okay, the Shinanju Stein. So I actually really like the original Shinanju, and I like the Shinanju Stein a lot. And also, unfortunately, it doesn't do anything during the movie. It's essentially just the control chamber for the Neo Zeong, and it's the Neo Zeong that does all the stuff. Even then, the Neo Zeong barely does anything. The Neo Zeong just like blows up a bunch of shit with its beam cannons, and crap, I don't even know what that thing is called, but like it kind of constructs this ring where it like does some crazy new type power stuff, and basically it allows Zoltan to use his new type powers to just kind of crush all of the helium-3 containers around him. And like normally helium-3, it's just like a gas that's inert, and you know, like, and it is under pressure, but like when you explode those containers, like it's just, you know, gas expanding. But what he's doing is he's using his new type powers to crush the containers, and that's kind of squeezing the gas to the point where it's undergoing nuclear fusion, and so it's releasing a lot more energy than it's supposed to. And so that's what he's doing with the Neo Zeong, and I guess in the ending battle he really doesn't do very much like himself, because what he's really doing is he's using the Neo Zeong's like control wires, and he's just capturing like other mobile suits and kind of using them to attack his enemies. So he's not terribly creative or anything like that, like in the Neo Zeong, but you know, there you go. So the Gundam Phoenix is the brother unit to the Unicorn and the Banshee, and supposedly it's gold, but if you really look at it in the movie, it's just yellow. They really don't put any work into making it have any sheen or anything like that. So that is a little unfortunate. So the Phoenix is a little unusual because, you know, it technically has no pilot, and it's being controlled by Rita's soul or something like that. And it doesn't really have any weapons. It doesn't carry a beam magnum, although it supposedly can use one. And the only weapons it has are these armed armors. Like basically they're remote controlled shields that it has on its back. And technically it has the arm mounted beam sabers, although that's only used once, like throughout the entire movie. And so the Phoenix just kind of flies around being an asshole to people for mostly unexplained reasons. And it doesn't even really fight people. It just kind of uses its new type powers to like force push people, and the armed armors will just kind of fly around and ram into people. So like watching the Phoenix isn't terribly interesting, like outside of it, you know, looking cool. Like just the way it engages in combat is not very interesting, you could say. With all this new type stuff going on, you know how I said earlier, like people watch Gundam for, you know, the science fiction and the technology and the mechanical design and stuff, but with so much heavy emphasis on new type stuff, it's like it's not technology anymore. It's just fantasy and magic and, you know, robots with powers. It's not technology anymore. So I guess that's kind of what makes the Phoenix unengaging. Yeah, but despite it being kind of uninteresting to watch in battle, like I do quite like its design. Overall, I feel the mechanical design in Gundam Narrative was a bit lazy, because, you know, the Shinanju Stein, the Phoenix, and the Neo Zeong 2 narrative version, they're just recolors with very mild adjustments to their physical appearance, and the Gundam Narrative is fairly underwhelming. Yeah, normally I like some mobile suits you can like just for their mechanical design or their appearance. Although I find that a lot of what affects my fondness for mechanical design is either their pilots or how they're used in the story and things like that. And in terms of all three, that is just very, very weak, especially the Shinanju Stein. And I quite like the Shinanju Stein's design, although Zoltan is such a horrible character, and he barely even uses the Shinanju in the movie. It's mostly all Neo Zeong. So yeah, so the mechanical design and narrative, it's fairly mediocre. Yeah, that's just what they did with it. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about some plot holes that occurred in the movie. So, towards the beginning of the movie, Michelle claimed that psychoframe mobile suits have the ability to manipulate time, her evidence being the dismantled reactors in those mobile suits, like during Gundam Unicorn. Now, like, even then, like, that evidence is very weak for supposing that these mobile suits can manipulate time. But the problem is, the psychoframe mobile suits, they don't even demonstrate that ability during the movie Gundam narrative. They never do it. So I'm kind of leaning towards they probably can't manipulate time. And she's just kind of throwing that out there. It just might be a misunderstanding, or I have no idea what's going on with that. But yeah, that was just very bizarre, like how that was handled in the movie. Regarding Michelle's motivations, there seems to be another hole in where she claims that she wants the Gundam Phoenix's technology because she wants to make humanity immortal. Although it's not really clear why she needs the Gundam Phoenix to do that, especially because there's sort of an abundance of other psychoframe mobile suits around. Now, like, maybe she wants the Phoenix because it already contains Rita's soul, and she's kind of dead and immortal at the same time. I guess she could capture it, or maybe she should just go find the folks who put Rita's soul into the thing. And then, at the same time, like, she may not even need the Gundam Phoenix because, like, the only thing that's special about it is it has full-body psychoframe. But Michelle is already employing a mobile suit that has that technology, the Gundam narrative. So maybe instead of trying to chase after this thing that is impossibly fast, like they say it can move at almost the speed of light, like instead of trying to chase something that insane, why won't she just, work with the Gundam narrative and see, like, if she can make use of its technology? It's basically the same thing. So she probably could have saved herself a lot of trouble in that regard. And then even later on in the movie, they run into the Neo Zeong, and I don't know if what the Neo Zeong has is psychoframe or not, but it's obviously a very powerful new type machine. It arguably even more powerful than the Phoenix, and especially more powerful than the narrative. So I don't know, like, you obviously know, like, where the Neo Zeong is, so why don't you capture that and try to use its technology? It's very powerful too. So yeah, that claim, like, in the movie, it just kind of falls flat because it doesn't really make sense if you just kind of take a step back and try to figure out, like, what's the best way to accomplish this goal. Now, something they left out of the movie was, how did they even get Rita into the Phoenix to begin with? So you see some scenes where the Flanagan Institute is performing some brain surgery on Rita, like maybe to extract her brain or something. They don't really show it, and I suppose that's related to it, but I guess they just don't explicitly show, like, how it happened. Like, I suppose, like, something very similar happened with the exam system, like from a different side story in Universal Century. That supposedly is also new type technology that has a person's soul, like, input into it. And then, like, all of the other new type phenomenon that used, like, human souls, like, those just kind of happened, like, in the moment, like, under duress. It's not clear how the engineers actually extract a soul from a human being and put it into psychoframe. That's, like, I think that's something they really should have tried to show, or at least examine or demonstrate. Okay, and here is a really, really big problem for me. What is the motivation for the Gundam Phoenix? So, supposedly, it's just flying around in space and fucking people up. And it's actually, like, using it... Like, it's actually flying around, like, destroying fleets of ships and killing people and stuff. And supposedly, like, this thing has Rita's soul in it. And, she's supposed to be this nice person and all that stuff. So, like, why is she hurting, like, so many people if she's so nice? they claim that the Phoenix's motivation is it's trying to seek out other Psycho Frame mobile suits and to destroy them. But it's just kind of shown that throughout the movie, it kind of looks like the Phoenix is just completely under Rita's control. And so, like, why would Rita agree to do something like that? Like, you know, because she's just this nice kid. Like, why would she work for these people who want to get rid of the unicorn and the banshee or other, like, Psycho Frame technology? Like, why would she agree to do that? And, you know, like, if she's supposedly such a nice person, like, how is she going around just murdering all these people? And then, like, at the end of the movie, like, the Phoenix just flies off, like, just completely forgetting about its mission. Like, there's this really big inconsistency for whether the Phoenix is just Rita, or if the Phoenix is working for this other purpose. It just kind of, it's like the movie forgets about it or something. It's very bizarre. Okay, so it's very clear that Gundam Narrative has some issues with it, but what can you really do to fix those problems? I think one way you can start is you can actually remove Jonah from the movie completely. Like, his character doesn't even have any screen time, he doesn't have any original thoughts, he doesn't change anything around him, he's just sort of there, and he's not even that great of a pilot or anything like that. So I think what can happen is his character can actually be completely replaced by Michelle, because Michelle is already a mobile suit pilot, although, like, while Jonah is piloting the narrative, Michelle's just standing there in the control room barking commands at him. Like, it's kind of like, instead of having two characters be useless in some ways, you could just kind of merge their roles into one and just have this one character who, like, motivates the plot and then takes care of the job at the same time. You know, there's no reason to split these two characters apart. And I think if you do that, you can actually focus the story a lot more on Michelle and Rita, because, like, Michelle feels terrible for having betrayed her friends, and she wants to meet up with Rita again to make amends for the past and kind of take control of this technology that can actually reverse all of her life's mistakes and then make things better. Okay, and in regards to Zoltan, the only way to fix him from being such a horrible and shallow villain is you can just either completely change his character and story, or you can just kind of cut him out of the story completely. Like, instead of having the Neo Zeon be the final opponent at the end, like, what if you just had the narrative and the Phoenix engaged in more elevated combat? Or if, you know, where you were design a different mobile armor for the Phoenix or something, that would be really interesting. Yeah, Zoltan's just awful. There's something very drastic needs to be done to fix that. I would actually vote for axing him from the movie completely, because there's just nothing of substance there. So let's just cut that out. Okay, so I've been talking a ton of trash about this movie, so maybe we should take some time to talk about what I actually did like about it. Like, I will have to say that the first two action scenes were animated very well. Like, a very exciting, very beautiful animation. That is the battle with the DJs, like, on the Earth. And then the first chase scene between the Phoenix and the Gundam Narrative's mobile armor. Yeah, so those two action scenes were great. Unfortunately, in the second half of the movie, they just kind of fell in quality and interest. Yeah, I got a little bit of good action out of the movie, so that's good. Okay, and in the final battle, Zoltan just kind of hunkers down in this Helium-3 storage site. And I thought this was really cool because essentially, Helium-3 it's sort of like the main pillar for technology in Universal Century. It's the mainstay of their economy, and it's sort of like oil and gasoline for us. So just seeing that as part of the setting was really cool that they can incorporate that into the movie. And generally, I really did like the music for the movie. So this was done by Hiroyuki Sawano. He also did the music for Gundam Unicorn. You can say that Sawano has one strength, and that is unbelievable levels of hype. And while that's good, he has his strengths, but, hype isn't appropriate for, all parts of a soundtrack. There might be scenes where you're just doing exposition or characters are just talking and stuff like that. And so, like, those parts of the soundtrack, they tend to be not very memorable from his work. But he does very good music for action scenes, and where he really, really excels is his insert songs, where he has a vocalist and stuff like that. So I think Gundam Narrative has three theme songs, and the one I like the most is probably the one titled Narrative. It plays during the ending credits, and that song is incredibly good, like, in my opinion. I think this entire trash fire is just worth having that song for. So, yeah, that's what I like most about this whole Gundam Narrative project. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on Gundam Narrative. Like, overall, it's kind of an incompetent mess, and I really wish it were a lot better, but, we got what we got. Yeah, the movie is just, like, intensely shallow. It doesn't really give the audience what it needs to be engaging, and that's, like, you need good characters, you need good stories, but that's pretty much the main weakness in a lot of Universal Century projects. I'm not sure if I agree with the direction that they're taking Gundam in recently, and especially Universal Century, because it seems to be too obsessed with referencing other parts of the timeline. And it's kind of like, okay, we managed to stay consistent with the timeline, and we'll do that. Like, that's like, it's their main goal, and they'll do that at the expense of writing and characters and everything else like that. Like, all they care about is, referencing, like, other new type stuff, or like this mobile suit has this lineage with this other mobile suit line and stuff like that. But I think what Gundam desperately needs to be more successful is to reach more audiences. And, they're focused on toy sales and stuff like that, but, like, I think your toy sales would be better if your stories were better. Like I was saying, like, good characters and good moments and action scenes and good writing, they can help you sell more model kits. So, there you go. I think Sunrise just very desperately needs new writers, and this is quite difficult for them because you need writers that both know the lore well for Universal Century, but you also need talented writers that can write engaging stories and characters, and there just may not be any people that fit in that part of the Venn diagram of those two things. So yeah, like, either they need to find that special person that can do both, or maybe they just need to abandon all the consistency in Universal Century and just go towards something new that's going to work better. Yeah, that actually makes me pretty worried about the future, because so Sunrise announced plans that they're going to try to release a Gundam movie every year. They're already working on Hathaway's Flash, which I'm a little worried about because I think it's the same team, and it has all the CG stuff going on. I do like the mechanical design from Hathaway's Flash a lot, but, like, I'm worried about the characters and the story, especially with the main character being Hathaway. And then also, I believe Legendary Pictures is working on a live-action movie for Gundam in the US here, and they're being advised by Sunrise, but as you can see here, like, that makes me worried because Sunrise doesn't necessarily make good Gundam movies either. So if Legendary is being advised by a company that doesn't make good movies, then that could be a really bad mess too. So, alright, well, that's my thoughts on Gundam Narrative. I'm really sorry that, like, I didn't enjoy it very much. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of people who loved it, and, I'm really glad you loved it. I'm really happy somebody got some enjoyment out of this. But yeah, that's gonna be it for now. Hopefully there will be better things in the future. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. That'll be it for now.